Welcome to our Finger Lakes Wine Alliance virtual tasting series. We're glad to have you joining us this evening. Tonight, our topic is aromatic white wines. We have a little change in our schedule for this evening. Our second flight, if you're tasting along with us, we're going to have you change your order. We're going to start out with the Cuca Springs Vineyard, then Villa Belangelo second, and then finish up with the Nap. So that's a change from how the flights were originally scheduled. And again, we welcome you tonight. We have some great wines. We were just going through them with the winemakers a few moments ago. Got some really amazing stuff and stuff that really shows off some of the aromatic whites of the region. My name's Jeff Hauk. I'm the winemaker at Lucas Vineyards. I'm going to be the moderator this evening. And we're going to get started right off with this first flight. I would like to welcome Aaron Roizen. Aaron is a longtime winemaker at Hosmer Winery. Does a great job. They have beautiful vineyards. Aaron makes some wonderful wines, and he has with him this evening his 2012 Chardonnay. And Aaron is going to tell you a little bit about the growing season and how that wine was made, and about some recent success with the style of wine that he's making. Welcome, Aaron.
Thanks, Jeff. So this Chardonnay that you're drinking, it's ripened a lot earlier than usual in 2012. It was a month earlier than typical. I guess I'll go back. So the suggested retail price is $13 a bottle, and if you're looking to find it after this tasting, you can go to our website at hosmerwinery.com. The growing season was warmer sooner, so we really didn't see a huge variation. The Chardonnay vines that we use for this particular wine, for the Hosmer Chardonnay, really old. They're about 30 years. They're really small clusters, really tight bunches. So they give a different flavor than some of the other clones we have. It's an older clone. I'm not sure what it is specifically, but it's a lot thicker skinned. It's 70% stainless steel fermented and 30% barrel fermented, and it's fermented in a mix of older American and French oak, so it's not a lot of flavor profile that we get from that. It's aged about 9 months in those barrels. We do stir the lees every other day for the first month after our fermentation finishes. And we just put it together, and it seems to work. And this is a little different than what we've done in the past. Typically, we've done 50-50 blend of stainless steel and French and American oak. But just seemed to present itself, and it's probably part to do with the harvest. The fruit seemed a lot brighter in the stainless steel portion, and gave it a little bit more aromatics. So I guess that's why it's worked its way into this tasting group. It's an interesting wine. What are some other questions that I should be answering to the folks?
What do you feel about your site, Aaron? You guys are located, those of you who don't know where Aaron's from, he's from the west side of Cayuga Lake in the Finger Lakes. What do you feel about your site that kind of helps you with making quality white wines?
Well, I think a big part of it is a very low vigorous site. Although I do know that the rootstock that it was planted to was 5B, and it would grow very vigorously for the first 10 years. And because the berries were so small and the clusters so tight, we would have a lot of issues with rot. After the vines matured, after 10 years of growing, it sort of leveled out, and we would get a lot lower yields, and the intensity of the fruit seemed to help, and being it was a low vigor site. So I guess that's one thing that makes it unique. It is on a sort of a really long east-west facing rows, and in sort of a undulating, sloping terrain. So that's a little different. So I think there's, by row to row, there's a lot more variability and flavors that are picked up. So it's not just one broad spectrum of one specific kind of flavor they get from the grapes. It's sort of a melange of flavor profiles that we get.
A lot of times when we're doing these tastings, folks are asking Aaron what you might recommend they compare it with for a food. Anything you could think of might be a nice match with the Chardonnay.
Oh, I don't know. Perhaps figs. I don't know. It's pretty versatile wine. I think it's it's aromatic, but it does have a lot of body. Fig is probably not a good pick for that. It's I like Chardonnay. It's good with pasta. It's good with pork. It's easy that way.
Very good. And for folks who aren't as familiar with, maybe they're more familiar with West Coast Chardonnays, maybe the biggest difference for them when they would compare that with more of their mass-produced Chardonnay that they might be used to drinking?
How is it similar to that,
or how is it different?
How's it different? I think the acids are probably a little bit higher pitched, so it has a lot of viscosity like you would get from a West Coast Chardonnay, but it has an acidity that helps wash it away. So, and there's a touch of residual sugar in there, so it keeps the palate buoyant, and the wine has a lot of spring in its step. So it's it's a very active wine. It's done its calisthenics, so
awesome.
Fine.
It's a healthy wine.
It is a healthy wine.
Well, thank you very much, Aaron. We may come back to you if we get some follow-up questions on your wine. And we appreciate the info. And we're going to move on to our second winery of the night. We have the owner of Fulkerson Winery, Sarah Fulkerson. Sarah's family has one of the oldest vineyard blocks. Am I getting this correct, Sarah? In the Finger Lakes. You could kind of expound on that. Sarah is a great wine grower, makes some excellent wines, and they are also a vineyard which tries out some new varieties and kind of pioneers in the Finger Lakes in that they're not afraid to try something that other people aren't doing to see if it'll work in the region. And Sarah has with him this evening one of those varieties that we're just starting to see in the region. It's a Gruner Veltliner. And Gruner, Sarah will tell you a little more about that, but it's not that widely planted in the region. So welcome, Sarah. Can you tell us a little bit about that 2012 Gruner?
Yeah, thank you. Well, to answer your first question, I'm the first generation winemaker, but the family has been growing grapes since the 1840s.
I'd say that was a long time.
But Gruner Veltliner, I planted it because I like the wine. It's a native, the variety is a native of Austria. It seems to do its best along the Danube and the Wachau region, which you can find a few wines in some of the larger stores, but typically they're all drunk at home. So. And I can see why. We last year was our first production in 2012, and it sold out in 7 weeks at the winery. It's still available in a few stores, both upstate and in New York City. And we could maybe help you find some if you contact our website, and otherwise, you may have to wait until May to get a little bit more with our new release, and this year's wines are looking pretty good already, too.
What's the cost of that wine, Sarah?
That's $14 retail.
And how much of that do you have planted on your farm?
We only have 2 acres at this time. It's a very interesting variety. It grows well here. It seems to, at least after the first year, it seems to mature. The vine seems to mature and settle into this climate. That's pretty important because not all varieties are the same. Some will just mature very well, and over winter and do well every year. Others seem to not stop growing in this climate. It is cool. It doesn't, it's not a long extended hot climate like many of the other regions in the world. So it seems to be better adapted here than, say, Sauvignon Blanc, but maybe not quite as well adapted as Riesling.
What about Gruner in the winery? Like, how do you deal with it? Does it see oak? Is it just done in stainless? What can you tell folks about how the wine was made in the winery?
Well, we try to keep it simple in the winery. Press it lightly, ferment in stainless. Leave it on the lees a little bit, at least on the fine lees. It seems to develop early and really show itself well. It's really not difficult in the winery as long as you bring it in at the right numbers. We watch it closely. They're very large clusters, so they have to be thinned. They do require a lot more handwork than something like Riesling, which has small clusters and doesn't necessarily require a lot of summer work if it's pruned properly in the winter. Gruner needs a little bit more fuss to have it come out right, but you can see the acid level drop to a certain point. It seems to sort of reach a ledge and then come down. And we can see that, and you can see it visually on the fruit, and it just tells you when it's ready. Brix levels in the 20s, typically the low 20s, and it tells us it's ready to go.
So for folks who maybe aren't as familiar with Gruner, maybe haven't had any, what should they be expecting when they taste that from a flavor profile? Like, what is the trademark of, like, for you, a nice Gruner?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because, you say, well, is it like Riesling? Not really. If anything, maybe it's a little bit more like Sauvignon Blanc without the grassiness. Maybe more like a ripe Sauvignon Blanc with a gooseberry.
So definitely, like, the acidity plays a big part in it.
It's got the acidity of Riesling, but that ripe gooseberry characteristic of a really ripe Sauv Blanc.
Same question. We just had, like, a blogger ask Sarah if you could recommend, like, a food pairing that you might enjoy at home with a Gruner.
Well, it's very versatile. This evening I had pork and sauerkraut with it. It worked very well. Works good with veal, fried foods, fish. It's just naturally prone to go well with food. It's we make it very dry, and it just has a nice way to make you drool and make your taste buds just enjoy the food that's in front of you.
It's making me want to have a glass right now. So the off this topic for just a second, Sarah, just a general question that one of the bloggers had asked is whether or not you have a sense of whites or reds doing better in the Finger Lakes. And so I'll let you field that one.
Well, certainly, I think all of us drink reds, and we want a red for dinner now and then, just like we want a white too. I think certain varieties like Riesling and perhaps Chardonnay here in the Finger Lakes are almost always going to perform pretty well for us, and the vines do pretty well for the grower. Some of the reds may or may not fall in that category. The ones that ripen mid-season may have some problems in wet years or cold years that maybe Riesling would not. But varieties such as Pinot Noir, Cabernet Franc, they tend to be fairly consistently good here, but don't expect a big warm climate style wine. Expect something a little more acidic, a little more flavorful, not so much alcohol, and not as sweet as one you get from the West Coast.
Very good. Well, thank you very much. And like we did with Aaron, if we get some more questions, I may come back to you. And I just want to, again, thank our Finger Lakes winemakers. Those of you who don't know, these guys are all in the middle of their harvest, working 15-hour days. And so we really appreciate them taking the time to come out this evening. So if any of them fall asleep during this tasting, you'll know why. They're definitely working their tails off right now. So I'm going to transition into our next wine for the evening. And we have with us from Lakewood Vineyards, owner and winemaker Chris Stamp. Chris, longtime winemaker, graduate at Cornell University, makes some outstanding wines, and is well known as just being one of the great guys in the Finger Lakes wine industry, who also happens to make awesome wines. And Chris has with him tonight 2012 Pinot Gris. And he's going to kind of take you through a similar thing with the growing season, how that wine came to be here tonight. And welcome, Chris.
Thanks, Jeff. One of the things that we get asked quite frequently in the tasting room about Pinot Gris is, well, they want a Pinot Grigio. And we say, Pinot Gris is exactly the same grape. It's just what the French call the Pinot Grigio grape that the Italians call Pinot Grigio. So once we get past that, no, but it's a much more familiar term to people. Pinot Grigio, it's easy to ask for a Pinot Grigio, But the French Pinot Gris, I think, kind of, as winemakers, we've kind of settled on a nomenclature. Pinot Grigio usually is a little thinner, tartar style of Pinot Gris, and the French style is usually a little more muscular, a little more phenolic profile, and sometimes can carry a little sweetness due to botrytis or whatever. And it's kind of more of an Alsatian model. And that's really where we feel that this vineyard lends itself better, a little more muscular wine, not the more austere Pinot Grigio style. And so it's a fairly low-cropped vineyard. It's a quarter-mile north of us. An interesting story, that we don't, while we grow a vast majority of the grapes we make wine out of, this grower is a quarter-mile north of us. His name's Frank Gelati, and an unbelievable grower, and it's well known amongst almost every winemaker that this guy does a great job growing grapes. If there's one botrytis berry in there, he can't sleep at night, and he's going to run up and cut it out in the middle of the night if he has to. But he grows wonderful grapes, and he called Pinot Gris Pinot Gris because he found them so difficult in the vineyard to grow. And he kept threatening, even though we were having a lot of success selling the wine, because I've always bought the entire vineyard from him, that he was going to tear them out because of the agony that they caused him. They would botrytis, so they would get loose from his canopy, and even though he tucked all the vines up nice and neat, and he called them Pinot Gris, and he was going to tear them out. So what I did is we put Gelati Vineyards on our label that next year, and he says, Chris, you're a genius. Now I have to keep them, and I have to grow them better. and he has. Thank goodness. It's been an excellent wine for us. The way we make it is, like I said, it's more of an Alsatian model. We like it a little fleshier, a little higher alcohol, so we let them fully ripen. But we also give them about 18 hours of skin contact. So we bring the grapes in, we destem them and crush them, but we don't press them. And we stick them back in our cooler and keep them very cold overnight, and the next day we press them off. And this extracts a lot of the flavors and the phenolics, the flesh from the grape, and I think makes a richer wine. And the price of it is $14. Seems to be going price today for our Pinot Gris. And people interested in buying it, I'd say check the internet. I didn't have time to do my homework today to memorize all the stores that we're selling in, but it's pretty widely available in New York. So I think he's got about 2.5 acres, 3 acres probably of Pinot Gris. I'm not positive.
It's kind of a neat idea, the crediting the grower It's done somewhat in the Finger Lakes, but it's not that common, and seems like a great idea to get them actively involved in it and get them a little recognition. And at the same time, they're kind of buying into the wine they kind of feel connected to it. So it seems like a win-win for you guys doing that.
Well, they are the other side of the coin. I mean, we can, as winemakers, it'd be wonderful if I could just sit here and take credit for all the good wines that we've made, but truly, it's the grower is absolutely pivotal in the whole thing. And there's years like this, and when I think it's been a great vintage, and it's a little easier to grow good grapes. But then there's other years that it's a lot tougher, and having someone who knows what they're doing in the vineyard is so crucial. And they need their name on the bottle, in my opinion.
So one of our bloggers just asked Chris if you would comment on this year's harvest, just your opinion about how things are going, a little feedback on, I believe they were from the Adirondacks, and they've had a lot of rain there, and they were just interested in what we've experienced through the harvest so far.
My reaction is that I hate to say whether wines are going to be really good for the year. I mean, I trust that everybody sitting in this room feels like the wines are going to be good from this year, but I don't like saying, oh, it's vintage of the century, because then next year you got to say it again. So I'm happy with the vintage so far. The wines take time to develop, but if you'd asked me, say about the 10th of September, I would have said, probably not on the air, but this is a disaster. We had a pretty decent summer, but then it just rained and it rained and it rained, and it looked like it was going to keep on raining and raining and raining. And then all of a sudden somebody shut the tap off, it dried up, and we had 2 weeks solid without a drop of rain. And everything that you thought was never going to drop the acid and develop or accumulate some higher sugars just came right along beautifully. And really, we've had maybe 1 or 2 days of rain since then, some cloudy days. But I'm watching varieties that I thought were never going to get ripe this year. We picked them already, and we didn't pick them because it was raining on them. We picked them because they were beautifully ripe. So I'm pretty excited about this vintage. Not making any prognostications on overall, but right at this point, I have no reason to believe that it's not going to be a wonderful vintage.
I think you other guys agree with that.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Yeah, it certainly had its surprises, but we've all been happy the way fruit has ripened this fall.
Well, I think with that, if we don't have any other questions for our first panel, you guys did a great job, and we're going to excuse you guys and move on to our second panel. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you. Good job.
Oh, you too, Chris. Good info from you guys.
What a deal.
We're exhausted.
Yeah.
Really, Randy, throw your
Beautiful
finger
in there.
We're going to practice all day.
Thanks, guys.
They
problem,
had to come in separately.
My wife told me this afternoon when she was leaving. She goes, "You remember that?" Kind of ish, maybe.
I guess they had those water glasses and I didn't put water in them. They're empty.
They said something to me about my phone. I forgot to turn the volume off.
Oh, yeah.
So we can put this spray for. So August, you'll be over here.
The last day I needed one, I used yours. I brought it down that night, next day. Well, I guess it's going to be a lot less. Oh, I've never found it.
Then Ian, you're in the middle.
The media what?
They're pretty quiet.
Well, that's not good.
Yeah.
Gotta wake them up.
Do you want to pass around and see if anyone knows what that one lady's talking about? Because I don't know what.
Homology? Do you know?
Homology?
Yeah, it's like,
Apple.
Yeah, that's science of growing up.
I didn't know.
is it just
Steph and I were thrown for that one.
Oh, is it fruit in general?
I
I
just-
don't know.
It could
Oh, I
be.
don't know. I thought it was like.
I thought it was just apple.
A palm fruit is a,
Yeah.
that just,
Isn't it? Is it pear?
Pear.
Pear being that category?
I'll come back and say like, well, of course I wanted to
I'm
get.
no palmologist.
And some people are having trouble
I'm no
with
homologist, how would I know?
you know, Chris, I
the,
think.
with the video. And it's not,
Oh, yeah?
it's different for everyone. Like it's working here.
Right.
And I think it's just people's internet connections.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Alan Laxo, not Alan Laxo. Yeah, I guess it was Alan Laxo and Ian Merwin were
Ian.
homologists.
Ian is Alan, maybe.
Oh, he might be young. Yeah, I think you're right.
You
I think
actually
he is.
worked there.
Say,
You worked at this station.
yeah.
No, we're not.
So where's the camera?
Right here.
Oh dear God, really?
Yeah.
Yep. You don't have to look at it. You just have a conversation with Jeff. And
All right, sounds good.
what I'll end up doing is, it's also recording. So I'll put it on YouTube, edit it up a little bit so that it's one video,
Right.
and then send it to everyone so you'll have a copy of it as well.
Do we want the bottles up here?
Yes, we do, Steve. Thank you.
I could have brought them in.
Thanks. And so it's Dimel.
Dimel, yes,
Dimel.
yes. As
Because
in,
I think I wanted to say a couple times Demel or something.
yeah,
Dimel.
everybody has a different variant. So, but yeah, it's imagine a man named Mel, and you are telling him to perish.
I've been there.
Dimel.
Dimel, yes, exactly.
And mine's Die Fancy. I wasn't really watching. Do people
want Steve's
taste their
moved
own
over,
wines as this goes on?
His is okay where it is, but that one originally you couldn't see it in the screen. You can't really see the bottles anyways on the video, but that's okay.
Yeah. Save the best for last.
I know. I think this is this would be a neat thing for people to. Gewurz. I like Finger Lakes Gewurz.
We need to shove Gewurz in front of more people.
People will enjoy it that are on this tasting.
Yeah.
People are afraid of umlauts. I think that's really the problem. Is people just fear umlauts.
You know, I was one of the judges at the panel leaders at the Golden Nose wine competition last year, and you know it's an amateur competition, so some of the people in the group had never even heard of Gewurztraminer.
That's
scary.
People were like, you know, interested enough in wine to like pay $200.
Like you would
That's
think
crazy.
they'd
That
be
is
familiar
crazy.
with it.
Yeah.
I mean, I would think more like Gruner or something.
Yeah, exactly.
It's obscure.
But you know, we were at Hudson River, the wine festival in Rhinebeck, and I couldn't believe how many people walked up to us and they said, "You have a wine. I know I can't pronounce it,
Yeah.
but I know I want to try it." And they were all into it. They just
They don't wanna say it.
Yeah, they don't want to say it.
I always just tell them to call it Gewurz.
Yeah.
All right, you
Big
guys
G.
ready to go live?
I think we are.
Okay. Hey guys, we're gonna go live. I really want my hair in. Okay. Go ahead.
Welcome back, folks. We're getting ready for our second flight of the evening, and personally, I'm very excited about this. I love Finger Lakes Gewurztraminers, and we've got 3 of them for you to try. And I think it's a variety that definitely holds a lot of promise in the region, and we really hope you're going to enjoy these wines tonight. So for our second flight, again, we changed the order. We're going to be starting off with Cuca Springs, then Villa Belangelo, and then finishing up with Knapp Winery. So to start with, we have August Dimel from Cuca Springs Vineyard. August is making the wine at Cuca Springs. He won a Governor's Cup in August this year for a Riesling, correct? And also, I believe this wine did very well in that same competition also. And August is going to tell us a little bit about how they specifically make Gewurztraminer at Keuka Springs, and then talk a little bit about the growing season. And he'll also be here to answer some questions for you folks. So welcome, August.
Thank you very much, Jeff. I appreciate it. So, Gewurztraminer. Everybody feels that Riesling is the star here in the Finger Lakes, and I think that's absolutely true. But I think that Gewurztraminer is quite possibly the strongest supporting player. I think that Finger Lakes Gewurztraminer is different from Gewurztraminer anywhere else in the world. I find that the aromatics that we get out of it here in this region are really different. You know, I think that you can get an Alsatian Gewurztraminer. It has a certain profile. I think you can get Gewurztraminers from around the world. But there's something about the purity of the fruit and the floral aromatics on Finger Lakes Gewurztraminer that I think is unmatched anywhere else. At Keuka Spring, not only are we focused on the nose of the wine, but for us, Gewurztraminer is a very textural wine. We think it's a bit more like Chardonnay than it is like Riesling. I mean, even though it's very much like Riesling in being an aromatic white wine, we think that it has the textural qualities of the Chardonnay. It's a slightly lower acid grape. In the end, the mouthfeel that we're looking for really is all about creaminess and suppleness, and that's really what we're going for in a Gewurztraminer, hopefully leading to a very, very long finish. So what we do to accomplish that, we do a cold soak, just like the other gentleman at the table. So basically, we let the juice sit in contact with the skins, and that extracts a lot of the aromatics. After that, we do something called hyperoxidation. So basically, we add oxygen to the juice in order to get rid of the phenolics. The phenolics are what create bitterness on the finish. So we do that. We let the juice settle, ferment it cold. Again, very much like everybody else does. And then we're not afraid to fine. Last year, we used whole milk to fine out the remaining of the phenolics, and really, we think that all of that gives a really beautiful mouthfeel. So that's really what we're trying to accomplish with the 2012 Gewurztraminer.
And that particular 2012, anything that was unique with regards to Gewurz?
Yeah, I mean, Gewurz really ripened very quickly in 2012. I mean, everything did. The 2012 harvest was over by this date last year, and we still have 34% more to harvest this year. But, you know, so it was a very quick ripening year, and what we found was in order for Gewurz not to go off the rails, we had to harvest early. I think Gewurz has a tendency to lose all its acid, to get incredibly high sugars, which leads to unbalanced alcohols. So we picked the earliest we've ever picked Gewurztraminer in order to keep the alcohol levels reasonable, not have to have crazy residual sugar to keep that in line, and also so that there was still, even though it's a low acid grape, we still need some acidity to really balance the wine.
And is that in a state grown Gewurztraminer?
It is not. No, we
Okay.
buy Gewurztraminer from 2 different sources. We blend them for one wine, and then we do a single vineyard, which is not what we're tasting. This is the blend.
So what lake was the fruit sourced from in the Finger Lakes?
As a Keuka Lake partisan, I will decline to answer the question. It was not Keuka Lake.
Okay. All right.
We won't pretend it was, though.
What was the suggested retail price for that, August?
Suggested retail price is $16.99.
Okay. And distributed throughout New York?
It is distributed throughout New York. We have a lot of accounts in Buffalo, Rochester, and Syracuse. We're now in New York City. The wine is available on, I actually just talked to our distributor, the Upper West Side, the Upper East Side, and the East Village. And I don't know the specific names of the places off the top of my head, but if you contact the winery and go to our website, we sell across the country. We actually do a fair number of internet sales, so if you have a pretty user-friendly site to do that, so you can come to the website and order the wine, or you can call us at the winery. We're very friendly people, and we will take your calls.
Okay.
And ship wine wherever we can ship wine legally.
And you mentioned that what you really love about Finger Lakes Gewurztraminer is the aromatics. And one of our questions we had was how you felt that those are enhanced by the Finger Lakes, basically the sites.
Yeah, I think that I don't know. You know, I think that we certainly the fact that we have a cooler climate helps in general with Gewurztraminer. I think that Gewurztraminer, if it gets overripe, does tend to lose some of its aromatics. So having a cooler climate does generally help. But what I think is fascinating is, you know, this year we got Gewurztraminer from 3 different sites, and they're all wildly different. And I think that it's going to take us some time to really start to pin down what specifically about these sites, you know, to start, you know, connecting the dots and figure out what it is that really pushes, you know, Gewurztraminer into one direction or another. But I think that in general the cooler climate is the key, and that all of these other things, whether it's the soils, whether it's the slope, whether it's the lake, I think we're going to figure all this out. Hopefully in my winemaking lifetime, but maybe not.
Very good. Lots of good information in August. We definitely appreciate everything that you've given us. And if we have any other questions, I'll come back to you and grab you. Our next speaker tonight is going to be Ian Berry from Villa Belangelo. Ian's a winemaker there. He's been a Finger Lakes winemaker for a number of years. Does a great job and is continuing with that great work at Villa Belangelo. And Ian's going to talk with us about his 2012 Gewurztraminer. Welcome, Ian.
Thanks, Jeff. My 2012 Gewurztraminer retails for $16.99 as well, just like August. I too am a big supporter and advocate of Gewurztraminer. I think it's just a wonderful white wine. Its spice and floral aromatics are really a great match to food as well. I love Thai food. It's one of my favorite foods. So Gewurztraminer Thai food is just one of my favorite things. And Gewurz is also fun from a winemaking standpoint because there's a lot you can do with it. It's not like some other varieties where there's kind of a procedure that you go through and you make a great wine every time and you just kind of find what works. With Gewurztraminer, I'm always trying to tweak it a little bit. And you can do that with skin contact, with fermentation temperatures, with yeast choices. So I'm constantly trying to find the right combination of those things to make the perfect wine. And the 2012, for example, I did about 24 hours of skin contact on, and skin contact, this particular time I just crushed the grapes into the press. The grapes were cold, so I could just allow them to sit in the press overnight and kind of soak up some of the flavors and the phenolics of the skin, and then pressed it off the following morning and fermented it cool, and ended up with this wine that we have here. And this wine came from grapes grown at two different vineyards. 90% of it was grown at Marty Gibson's vineyard, which is in Dresden, New York, on the west side of Seneca Lake. A really kind of unique vineyard site that's right next to the lake. I mean, you could literally stand in his vineyard and throw a stone into Seneca Lake. It's that close to the lake. And it's a small site that I had never really known much about before I started working at Belangelo. And so 90% of the fruit in that came from Marty Gibson's vineyard.
For folks who maybe aren't that familiar, Ian, with Finger Lakes Gewurztraminer, what might be some flavors that they could expect to taste when they're trying Finger Lakes Gewurztraminers?
Sure. I think that the Finger Lakes style of Gewurztraminer is a pretty classic style of Gewurztraminer, and it's what you find in especially European Gewurztraminer. A lot of lychee. Lychee fruit is a real typical descriptor of Gewurztraminer. Rose petals. I think this one in particular has a lot of rose petals, particularly dried, kind of savory rose petal. And spice, I often get almost a ginger or sandalwood spice off of Gewurztraminer.
So they sound like kind of a neat thing for folks to try. That's a little. They're looking for something a little out of the ordinary. It sounds like Gewurztraminer something would be right up people's alley. Now that some of those flavors you're saying, anything that you might recommend that you would like to pair that with a meal?
Yeah, like I said, Thai food, especially if you find a Gewurz with a little bit of residual sugar and you have a curry, the sugar and the curry really kind of work off of each other, and the spice and the Gewurz works off the curry. So if you never tried it, you should try it.
So it sounds like kind of a neat thing for folks out there to try and get their hands on a bottle and try it, because I think they're also, if they've only had Gewurztraminer from other parts of the United States, I agree with you guys that there's definitely some unique characteristics in Finger Lakes Gewurzes. All right, well, thank you very much, Ian. Anything else you want to add about that 2012 growing year that maybe made it unique?
2012 for the
And
Gewurz.
also, like, people are interested in how things have been going with Gewurztraminer this season too.
Okay. It's really kind of interesting because 2012, by all accounts, was one of the best vintages in recent history. But for Gewurztraminer, for me in particular, last year, I actually picked it a little earlier than I would have liked to, and this year I actually got it a little riper than I did last year, which is the opposite of what logic would define, it seems. So, this year I'm also doing some other things with experimenting with skin contact times, and I'm even doing a little barrel fermentation with the Gewurz.
So one of the questions, Ian,
Yep.
someone asked if that was 100% stainless, your Gewurz.
This one was 100%.
And then there was also a comment, which is someone picked up kind of like a little oily texture, which is kind of a varietal thing with Gewurztraminer.
Yeah.
So that wouldn't be that uncommon if they were kind of getting that sensation in their mouth.
Yeah. I think that means
So they
they're doing
were
something
maybe
right.
they're psychic if they were picking up like a little subtle oak character.
Yeah.
They knew that you were going to do it next
Tell
year.
in the future. Yeah.
Stay tuned.
Yeah.
Ian will keep experimenting, and I think a lot of people do find that in the winemaking industry that it's a fun variety to work with because it does have some of those unique characteristics. Thank you very much, Ian. We're going to transition on to our third wine of the flight, and we have with us tonight from Knapp Winery and Vineyard. Longtime Finger Lakes winemaker, has worked with Gewurztraminer for probably longer in the Finger Lakes than anybody, any other panelist we could have had up here tonight. And Steve DeFrancesco. Steve's got tons of experience. He's made some great wines and continues to do so. And he has with him his 2012 dry Gewurztraminer. Welcome, Steve.
Thanks, Jeff, for the kind words. I appreciate that.
Oh, anything we would give Steve, he deserves more.
So this is our 2012 Gewurz. It was grown by Sunrise Hill Vineyards near Interlaken, near Lucas Vineyards.
Yep, they're my neighbors.
Yeah.
And interesting, Steve, you feel free to tell. Someone else was talking about a grape grower who had an immaculate vineyard.
Yes, this vineyard is immaculate. I mean, the row middles are like a putting green, literally. They spend way more time than they need to grooming this vineyard. It's really beautiful. It's called Sunrise Hill. We buy Riesling and Gewurz from them. We don't have any Gewurz ourselves. We've got quite a bit of Riesling, so that just adds to what we need. But on the Riesling, but it's west side of Cayuga Lake, and sometimes in the cool years we get grapes from east and west sides of Seneca and west side of Cayuga, and typically you think of the east side of Seneca as being the banana belt where everything gets warmer and everything's perfect, and it certainly is very nice. But sometimes the warmer years I like the west side because it retains the crispness and the flavors a little bit more. And then like Ian, we picked these in September. I think it was September 27th. I can't remember. Usually this year it was October 4th, and the year before, 2011, it was October 12th or something. So it was 2.5 weeks ahead of the year before. And yet, because it was so warm, I think that the aromatic varieties sometimes benefit by coming in not so overripe. it retains a lot more. The acidity drops out. You can always add acid, but the sugar in this was 22.8, so that made it higher alcohol. It was actually almost 14% when we were done, when it got dry enough. So we have higher acids at 2012 than typical, but that's what a vintage gives us.
So occasionally with probably all the panels with this variety, is it common that sometimes acid has to be added back to the wine?
To Gewurztraminer, and sometimes lately Rieslings have been a little bit lower too. So the later varieties, we typically need to get that pH and acid in balance, and we add that very early, like if not to the cold soak, right after pressing and settling, we'll add some acid. Even though it's a little bit of a moving target at that point, it just
to kind of get it closer,
yeah,
so it's make an adjustment early in the wine.
Right, and gets us in our ballpark a little bit better, and we can, after fermentation, the alcohol changes the solubility of the acid, and we don't want to get boring about that, but that's something that later on we can fine-tune when it's wine.
Definitely. The suggested retail price of that, Steve?
It's $14.95.
And how widely available is that wine?
It's available through internet sales, and in New York, we have a really good distributor in Westchester North is well distributed and are available, certainly. And then in Metro New York, we have a good distributor down there too.
That block of Gewurztraminer that this wine is, how big of a block of Gewurztraminer is that?
We don't get all of it, so I'm not sure, but it's probably 2.5 acres.
Okay. And we haven't really even touched base tonight with trellis systems with any of these. I'll just kind of shoot through you guys if you know. What trellis system is that one on, Steve?
This is Scott Henry, and so it's a divided canopy up and down with a gap in between, and catch wires that hold the top canopy and the bottom canopy separate. So it gets a good balance of vegetative and fruit growth, as well as opening up the fruit zone that lets the air get through and the sunlight get through, and it helps dry out the
and with Gewurztraminer, we haven't really touched on, like, there is a lot of vegetative growth with that variety. Like, it likes to grow like crazy.
Yeah, and remember, I used to work at Lucas, but back in the days when all the grapes were trained the same, which was the way you would grow Concord and Niagara, and nothing wrong with that, or those varieties, but Gewurz would get a real leafy canopy, and I remember in 1987 sampling a particular vineyard on the west side of Seneca, and you had to reach in up to your armpit
try and find the grapes.
I know they're in there. It was a jungle, and the berries, the clusters, the same cluster would have red and bright yellow, lemon yellow berries in the same cluster, and those and with the right kind of canopy and manipulation, you get a lot more synchronous ripening. You don't get those.
So with folks, sometimes they hear like, oh, things have gotten better in the Finger Lakes with regards to wine. And what Steve's talking about has been accomplished a lot through crews coming through and helping us improve like our trellis systems, and it's definitely helped us with the reputation of the wines.
Yes.
Steve, someone asked about, they know Naps has a restaurant.
Yes.
So they asked like what they might look at pairing, if they did like a wine and food pairing, what might be a nice match there for.
Like Ian says, it goes nicely with food that has some heat. The alcohol and a touch of sugar and the aromatics tend to go with that. And my recommendation with food and wine is always that if you like it, then it's right.
Perfect match.
That's right. And I mean, there are some things that can be a little bit weird, but if you like the wine and you like the food,
don't worry about it.
Don't
Enjoy.
worry about it. Enjoy it. Yeah.
Just kind of quick, Ian, do you know what training system yours was grown on?
It was a VSP, I guess, almost like a modified VSP, meaning vertical shoot positioning, which which means there's a fruit zone kind of about this high, and then the shoots are trained upwards, and that exposes the fruit so they get sunlight and ripen more evenly.
And probably the system that Steve mentioned and the one Ian just mentioned are probably two most popular ones for vinifera grape growing in that Finger Lakes. So.
And as it turns out, mine, one vineyard is on VSP, the other vineyard is on Scott Henry.
So we had a 50,
so we had a combination
shot.
of the two. And I'll just sort of put in my shot for Scott Henry. I think it's really a fabulous system for this variety. We just planted 1.5 acres of Riesling, not Riesling, Gewurztraminer. We planted Riesling too, but we planted 1.5 acres of Gewurztraminer, and we're setting it up for Scott Henry because we really think that really helps with Gewurztraminer.
I'll start with you, Steve, and one of our bloggers had asked if you had a dream grape that you would like to work with. What would it be?
Well, that's here's a funny thing about which of your kids do you like the best. I like a little bit of variety, and if you ate the same food every day, even if it were lobster or filet mignon, it would get boring after a while. So I like working with lots of different things. It's fun to work with the aromatic varieties from around here, and the viticultural diversity that we have here is a lot of fun to be a part of. And even Dr. Richard Smart had mentioned that he has fond memories of having gotten his master's degree at Cornell in the Finger Lakes, and the viticultural diversity that's here that isn't like many of the newer regions or more international regions that use the same handful of international varieties. Merlot, Sauvignon Blanc, Chardonnay. As long as we're here in an area that enhances aromatics, I like dealing with that. But I like a red Zinfandel from the Sierra foothills too. So there's all kinds of neat wine all over the world.
But we're not, even with global warming, we're not quite ready for trying that one.
No, I don't think so. I'm not hoping for it to become California here. So,
nope.
Not that there's anything wrong with that. I think we should.
Ian, anything that you always want to work with? Dream grape?
I mean, I love Pinot Noir. I traveled to Oregon at one point just to work with Pinot Noir for a little, for a little bit. So I love Pinot Noir. I love Riesling, obviously, and Gewurztraminer. As far as stuff that I've never worked with that I'd like to, I was in Austria about 5 or 6 years ago, and I tasted some really interesting red wines in Austria from varieties like Zweigelt and Saint Laurent. I know there's some people experimenting with them here, but I've never gotten to work with those varieties, and I'd like to someday.
Very cool. Anything, August?
If I spent the rest of my winemaking life making Gewurztraminer, I would not cry. I love Gewurztraminer. It is my favorite variety, far, far and away. I think it's just fabulous here, and I think it's a fabulous variety to work with. There is a small part of me, a very small part of me, that thinks baking Zinfandel would be awesome. So if global warming hits in the next 30 years or so, maybe I'll be on the bleeding edge of the next generation of Finger Lakes Zinfandel. But
there you have
it.
You heard it here first. Well, thank you very much, Steve. Lots of great information. And thanks to our second panel. You guys did a great job, and we appreciate all you writers and bloggers who joined us this evening. And we're going to wrap up our virtual tasting series for this evening. And hopefully you'll join us again sometime. Thank you.